Okay, this is probably one of my favorite clips out of this run. That floor clip, nobody does. Especially not unbuffered, and especially not in that positioning. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Dragon Blitz here, and this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while now. There's just something that's been bothering me for a couple of years now, and that's the fact that if you go to youtube.com right now and you search SotN Speedruns, for example, you're going to see a lot of my runs pop up first, but one run in particular that pops up that is very concerning to me is the most viewed run of any SotN speedrun on the entire platform, probably the most viewed SotN speedrun of all time, is this run right here. This 200.6 Lux/hard modes in 136.59 RTA. This run is, I'll just go out and say it, it's cheated. The run is not legitimate. The runner uses save states and possibly macros and other cheats as well to achieve this run, and it's not legitimate. And I don't think a lot of people know that, specifically because if you look at the description itself, you'll see here that they're claiming they didn't use save states. Long story short, this video is not legitimate, and I'm going to be going over exactly why that is from a speedrunner's perspective, a real-time runner's perspective, the world record holder's perspective. And before we get too ahead of ourselves, I just want to say I want to thank everybody who subscribes to the channel. It helps me out a lot, and everybody who's been supporting me on Patreon as well. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to be doing this as a full-time job, so thank you very much. If you're interested in supporting me there, check out the links in the description. Also, if you're interested in a longer cut version of this video, on my Patreon, I have a version of this video that goes into more detail about other specific situations, as well as the script and notes that I used for this video. This is available as well if you're interested, and let's get back to the video. Basically, the reason I'm making this video is because I don't want people to get the wrong expectation for what SotN speedrunning really is and what an RTA runner is capable of. And none of this would bother me if the person just was honest and claimed that the run was performed with save states and that it's a tool-assisted speedrun. I think a lot of people don't really know the difference and probably wouldn't have cared if they were just honest from the start of it. And to start, I'm not going to be showing the run in this aspect ratio because it's absolutely horrid. I don't know why they decided to stretch the screen as wide as humanly possible. Like, look at that, that's disgusting. So we're going to actually watch the run in a normal aspect ratio. I'm going to stretch it manually to a better aspect ratio. So first things first, I'm going to go over why this run would never be accepted on the SotN leaderboards to begin with. And that's because the emulator that's being used for this run is not an approved emulator for SotN speedrunning. This emulator has advantages on load times as well as lag that happens in the game. It doesn't emulate the lag properly, so this runner gets a huge advantage for that. Another reason why is because they use an abuse called left plus right. So in this emulator, most emulators don't allow this unless you specifically like set them up to do this. This person is able to press left and right at the same time, and normally if you have a controller, like, I don't know, like an SNES controller or any kind of normal controller, if you try and press left, you can't also press right at the same time unless your controller is completely busted or you're physically like manipulating or modifying the controller in some way. So there's not a normal way for you to be able to do this. This ends up saving the runner a lot of time with a specific movement technique that I'll show off later. So to begin with, I'm going to be going over what I see are the most important things that to me show that this run isn't realistic for a human to perform. Starting off, so here I'm going to get into one of the bigger offenses that's very early on in this run that this runner performs that makes it very clear that this run is not legitimate. So coming up here is probably one of the most difficult skips possible in Symphony of the Night. It's opening a shift line using a level up and a heart refresh. In order to do this anywhere in the game, it requires frame perfect timing of the backdash as well as pixel perfect positioning in the start of the backdash. So what you're doing is you're trying to backdash, and then on the next frame you gain a level up, and then once the level up's over, you buffer that into a heart refresh. This is performed in some speedruns, and I have examples of actual RTA runners attempting the skip, but I just want to show what the cheated run does and then compare that to real runners. So first, they're setting up the positioning here by eyeballing it, I guess, and it looks like it's not the right positioning, and then they set it up and go for it. Mind you, this is not a real setup. This is not how any human being would go about maneuvering themselves in small spaces. They wouldn't move that far out of the way just to move back. you would be positioning yourself using crouch walking. Crouch walking allows you to walk forward, then cancel the walk with a crouch, and then see your positioning from there. This is just absolute bullshit. The fact that they don't map buffer this trick is frame perfect, and normally if you want to make frame perfect tricks easier in the speedrun, you would map buffer them. And this runner is not necessarily like opposed to map buffering things. They've map buffered things in other speedruns around the same time that this run was recorded. So they know how to map buffer and they know that it makes things easier. But for whatever reason, I guess they're just godlike and got the frame perfect, pixel perfect trick without, any sort of setup whatsoever. It gets it first try. Something that's important to note about this trick as well is the fact that the skeleton is actually walking back and forth constantly. So the actual frame where the dagger is going to hit the skeleton is going to vary every single time. So not only is it frame perfect, the actual frame that you need to backdash on is going to be different depending on when you throw the knife. So there's no way to consistently set it up unless you use map buffering. Mind you, you only have one heart refresh for this trick. So if you're misjudging your positioning at all and you use that heart refresh, the run is over. You can't perform this trick anymore. But of course, they get it first try without any sort of issues at all. If you are a real speedrunner doing this in real time, I have one of the runs that I performed that does this trick. So this is my zero bosses speedrun. What's important to note here is that I'm using a backdash positioning setup by jumping into this corner up here. That gets me into the same position every single time. I jump in it twice specifically to ensure that I have full momentum going forward and I end up exactly in the right positioning. Then I do 2 full backdashes from here. And this gets you into the pixel perfect positioning. This is the setup basically every runner would use in a run like this. Yes, the setup costs 2 seconds to do, but this is easily one of the hardest tricks that you can do in SotN Speedrunning. So of course you're gonna go for it. And then from there, I'm using the dagger much like the cheated run did, but I'm gonna be map buffering to make sure I confirm that I have the right frame before I do the backdash into the level part refresh. I'm not even the only one that goes for this setup. This setup has been around for a very long time. Here's another run from about 2014. This is the world record run for the arbitrary code execution speedrun. Does the same exact setup. Does it a little bit faster than I do in my world record. But still, nonetheless, the top runners at the time always did the backdash setup to line up pixel perfectly and also map buffered the setup, because otherwise it is essentially random whether or not you get it. So the fact that this runner gets this trick unbuffered with no setup in this run is extremely suspect. And then, just as a fun comparison, we'll look at a tool-assisted speedrun that also performs this trick. Tool-assisted speedrun doesn't go for any sort of setup either. It just does it. Granted, a little bit faster than the cheated run, but I'm pretty sure if the cheated run looked like this, it'd be a little bit more obvious that it was cheated. You might be thinking to yourself, maybe this is just the best execution anybody has ever had in SotN Speedrunning. So this is actually a run from the same person 3 months prior to the upload of the cheated run that we are analyzing here. And this run, you might be thinking to yourself, well, 1, has terrible quality, and 2, you're gonna notice something here. They pause buffer a frame perfect trick. That version of Richter skip is frame perfect. They do a setup to make sure they're in the right positioning, because it's also pixel perfect. So this is the same runner 3 months prior, doing a setup to ensure that they're in the pixel perfect positioning, as well as pause buffering the trick itself. So it's interesting that within the span of 3 months, they would stop using this philosophy of pixel perfect setups as well as pause buffering to ensure frame perfectness, which basically every runner was doing at the time. Threw that out the window to perform absurdly difficult tricks with no setup, frame perfectly, in an 1.5-hour run, and gets all of them first try. So here's a clip of them going for Richter skip. It seems like they learned the Wolf version of Richter skip in between the 3 months before their last run that they posted on this channel. That's not the pixel setup that you would go for in this for this trick. You wouldn't set up the Wolf while it's on the slope. That's not something that RTA runners go for. The actual setup would be somewhere closer to this. And most RTA runners, even back then, during this time, knew the proper frames and proper pixel setup for this trick. Here's a photo album posted July 3rd, 2015, before this run that we're looking at was ever posted. And This shows the proper pixel setup for Richter skip. This is well known in the community at the time, and it has all of the possible frames that you need to set Richter skip up with. So the fact that this runner completely ignores this setup goes to show that they knew they were going to get the trick without needing to set it up. Also, something that's interesting to note about this trick is that they transform into the bat very quickly there. Let's watch that again. There's something a little odd about how quickly they transform into the bat, and that's because normally you go for the jump and then you wait. You look in the upper left-hand corner to see if you can see this little purple background. You normally can't see this unless you do the Richter skip in this way. This runner has 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames, and they're already transforming. So they had 2 frames to react that they got the skip, which is humanly impossible. No runner transforms like that without visually confirming, especially on a run that is this good. Almost an hour into it, they've gotten so many frame perfect tricks up to this point. You would think they would have some form of safety measure to ensure that they're not wasting a ton of time by transforming into the bat unnecessarily. But instead, they just transform into the bat without reacting. Every other runner reacts there. So earlier I talked about left plus right abuse, and this is an example of what that looks like. If you have momentum and you're in the bat transformation, and if you're pressing both left and right movement-wise at the same exact time, which you cannot do on console normally. This is not possible on like a real speedrun. Even if you were playing on Xbox, which allows both analog and D-pad movement, you can't press like left on the analog and right on the D-pad to have this happen. It prioritizes one over the other. So you have to specifically allow your emulator to do it this way, and it is banned in pretty much every form of speedrunning that has glitches that are associated with pressing left plus right on the same frame. But if you do that, the bat itself will have its wings frozen, and you preserve all of your momentum going forward. And this is absolutely broken and not allowed in SotN Speedrunning. It gives an unfair advantage to someone who sets up an emulator to just allow you to press left plus right at the same frame. But on console, you cannot do this. And preserving your momentum this way is great for speedrunning because it doesn't cost very much MP at all. You're not wing smashing, so you're not losing MP. And this person uses it all over the run to save time. So that's another reason why this run would not be accepted and is considered cheating. Not only is it because they use save states to do absurdly ridiculous task-only glitches, essentially, but they also cheat to have an unfair movement advantage as well. So that's important to note. And in general, in luck mode, your MP is much lower than it would be in normal mode. So every wing smash costs 8 MP, and when you're in luck mode, you maybe only have enough to do 2 or 3 wing smashes in a room, depending on your level. This far into the run, about 30 minutes into the run, they're able to do about like 4 or 5 wing smashes. I frame counted every one of these wing smashes, and they are, well, one, going through screen transitions as well pauses the inputs that you're doing essentially in game until you're out of the screen transition. So if you're trying to do inputs during a screen transition, the game will not register them. And the input that you have to do for a wing smash is you hold the jump button and you do up, back, down, forward in a 3/4 circle motion, and then you release the jump button. So if you do any of those inputs during the screen transition and then it's different and doesn't line up after the screen transition, the game doesn't accept the input and you can't do the wing smash. Because in order to chain wing smashes, you have to do the input over and over again within a 64 frame window. I frame counted this wing smash right there. It was exactly 64 frames. And then every wing smash afterwards is exactly 60 frames. And this is a common thing that I noticed in this person's run early on. Later on in the run, their wing smashes become less frame perfect, but when they have extremely limited MP for some of these sections, my guess is what they did is if they do a wing smash through a screen transition, the wing smash is done manually frame by frame, and then every other wing smash that isn't in a screen transition is using a macro that does it at exactly 60 frames. Even wing smashes right here, this wing smash into another wing smash was exactly 60 frames. I frame counted that as well. Here is an example of some more of those frame perfect macro style wing smashes. The first two, in fact, if you look, gain height and then lower into the same exact position. Those two right there were definitely macro wing smashes because it gains height and then loses height the exact number of pixels and then does it again. And ends up exactly in the same horizontal position. This last one was probably done manually because they gain a tiny bit of height and then wing smash downwards to set up into this next section. was either done manually, like tool assisted, or done manually. They had a save state there, and then they just did it in real time. So essentially, a lot of this movement is a mixture of macros, tool assisted, frame by frame inputting, and probably just redoing sections over and over again with save states. Okay, this is probably one of my favorite clips out of this run. That floor clip, nobody does. Especially not unbuffered, and especially not in that positioning. Most players, if they're going to be doing a floor clip in this room, they go for a floor clip against the stairs right here. They jump around this position and then untransform. Mind you, all of these floor clips are near frame perfect. They might have like a 2-frame window on the jump and a 1-frame window on the untransform, or it's the other way around. It's a 1-frame jump and a 2-frame untransform, something like that. But each individual floor clip that you see, and I'm going to show you all of the floor clips that this person does, these are all first try and unbuffered. Each one of these has a different timing for both the jump and the untransform. So it's not like you can just memorize the timing for floor clips in general. Each individual floor clip that you go for has a different timing that you have to practice and memorize, and they are all nearly frame perfect, double frame perfect inputs. That was floor clip number 1. This is floor clip number 2. Again, another floor clip that literally 0 human beings go for in real time. That one is definitely double frame perfect and probably sub-pixel perfect because of the angle of this slope. Essentially, the steeper the slope, in general, the easier it is to clip into the floor with enough speed using the wolf. But if the slope is more shallow, it's much harder to get the wolf clipped in. I would guarantee, without looking this up, this floor clip is double frame perfect and probably pixel, if not sub-pixel perfect as well, in order to get. And again, gets it first try with absolutely no setup. All right, this clip is from later on in the run. They just used the library card. Again, no positioning setup. They just kind of walk and then transform into the wolf. And then they go for this, you know, nearly frame perfect floor clip. The other thing that is interesting about this floor clip in particular is the purpose of the speedrun is to collect every single map tile. And this is their first time in this room during the speedrun. You would think they would use this opportunity after just getting a very difficult trick that gets you into this room quicker than it would normally, that you would go to the left because there's more rooms that you need to collect over there. And that would make the route make more sense. You would go to the left and then go back to the right. But this person is so confident that they're going to hit this same exact floor clip again later on in the run that they don't do that, which makes 0 sense routing wise. If you are an RTA speedrunner, you would route that if you get this trick, you would go over and grab the room because it's not guaranteed that you would get this trick. And this trick doesn't save enough time to go for multiple times. So if you hit this trick and you get it first try without any sort of setup or whatever, let's say you just go for it, which is possible in some speedruns. That particular floor clip was a part of the ABR SR speedrun, for example. It was one of the tricks that you would go for, and if you get it, great, and if you don't, you just move on. So the fact that they're banking on getting this trick twice in the run in order to collect all the map tiles makes 0 sense routing-wise, which makes me even further suspicious as to thinking that this run is tool-assisted because they know for a fact they're going to get this trick again later, so they don't need those map tiles now. This clip is absolutely insane. Again, has absolutely no setup, position-wise, sub-pixel-wise, for this trick. And this is one of the hardest floor clips, if not the hardest floor clip in the game. And not only that, they rely on this floor clip for the route that they go for later on, like immediately afterwards. So if you don't get this floor clip, mind you, they get it like in an insane position. Most of the time, you end up in the floor over here. They are all the way over here. This requires absolute frame-perfect, pixel-perfect positioning, which no runner would realistically get 40 minutes into a run after they've already gotten 3 other floor clips first try with no setup. And they use this trick to go out of bounds to get map tiles faster. Also, is they pull up the map for what I assume is a map buffer, maybe, but that doesn't make any sense because they don't really need a map buffer anything at this point because they're already doing everything frame by frame. So it's either a issue that they had to pause the game using the map in order to set up a save state, possibly, or they just messed up and inputted the map during the save state after they had already gotten it and they just wanted to keep the segment. because they don't really check the map in this run to ensure that they get map tiles. Because that's another thing that I'll go over later on in this video, is that they don't check the map ever to ensure that they got a map tile. And there are some map tiles in this game that are extremely difficult to get. They're extremely finicky, sometimes glitchy, and just don't give you the map tile unless you're on like pixel perfect positioning. This is a fairly standard wolf clip. Basically every speedrun that would do this wolf clip though wouldn't use Power of Wolf to set it up. They would do, there's a specific like pause buffering setup, but of course this runner is just too good, doesn't need pause buffers, doesn't need any form of positioning setups, just gets the trick first try, just like all the other floor clips that are basically frame perfect. This is that same exact floor clip that we saw earlier, just started from a different position. Oh wow, what a surprise, gets the floor clip again. And then this time they go to the left. It's almost as if they knew they were going to get this floor clip without any sort of issues whatsoever. Strange how that works. And then here's the last wolf floor clip that this runner goes for in the speedrun. And this floor clip is absolutely insane. Yeah. Again, another floor clip that no RTA runner goes for, because this floor clip saves 4 seconds maybe at most. But the fact that a run that is an hour and a half long with 7 very difficult floor clips in it, and other tricks, mind you, on top of that, they're all being performed with no setups, no pause buffering, no map buffering, no nothing, is absolutely insane. So after killing Aurochs, these turnaround backdashes are frame perfect, mind you, and he performs 3, waits a second, and then performs 3. I frame counted these. These are all performed with the same exact timing. You could even tell that they're essentially the same exact timing just from watching them a couple of times. The rhythm of all of these backdashes is frame perfect, both in its ability to turn around quickly, because you need to turn around 1 frame after backdashing, I believe it is. And this runner goes for 3 of them, waits, and then goes for 3 of them with the same exact timing. To me, this looks like TAS movement when TASes are waiting for something to happen and they show off. And this person went for something that seemed somewhat realistic and would be entertaining for this run, I guess. Again, this run is a TAS. It's a tool-assisted speedrun. But for whatever reason, they're trying to pass it off as not a tool-assisted speedrun. There's lots of moments like that. You can tell that they just wanted to put something entertaining in a position where there's nothing else going on. So they go for these risky swag movements, or they just do random stuff like that. And it's clear that they're putting on a show, that this is a recorded performance, much like a tool-assisted speedrun, and not in the same way that an RTA speedrunner would be performing this. An RTA speedrunner would not be performing random movement things frame perfectly with the same exact rhythm after killing a boss. You might be going for a specific movement like shield dashing or front sliding to keep your hands warm or to do something like that, but it would not be with the same exact cadence and rhythm and it being frame perfect for no reason. Another thing that's interesting about this, notice the MP going in, and notice the type of movement in the type of fight that this player goes for. Slowly double jumps into the fight and then starts the fight after trying to gain some MP. And look at the MP bar after the first cast, right there. It looks like they're not gonna have enough for another one. Or just barely enough, maybe? Let's see. They have 0 MP left. They had, if you look at the UI here, they gained just enough MP to cast the spell, and then 1 frame, 2 frames. Within 2 frames of them gaining the MP, which you cannot react to. You can't react to seeing this, you just have to go for it. So within 2 frames of them getting the MP, they're going for the Shield Rod spell, and it's the exact amount of MP that they needed. Nowhere in this run does this player attempt to use a spell, or to wing smash, or to use the Shield Rod combo when they don't have enough MP to do it. And there's no way for you to know exactly how much MP you have just by looking at the UI. Because depending on what level you have and depending on the mana roll that you get for each level, the amount of mana you're going to have is random every single time you do a run. So there's no way that this player knows exactly how much mana that they have and exactly how long to wait. To me, this looks like they used save states and realized, oh, I need to waste a certain number of time. You can even see it here. Instead of trying to attack Aurochs early, which you could do here, like, they could be doing damage to Aurochs at this point, but instead, they sit there and wait for a couple of frames. Why would they wait for a couple of frames? It's because they're waiting to get their MP back, because they know exactly how much MP they need to finish this fight. In general, there are a lot of situations like this where it seems like they didn't route out their MP exactly perfectly, but within individual sections, they know exactly how long to wait before gaining enough MP for going for specific movement. There's another example of this that I'll show. So this is another example of the godlike MP management that this player seems to have. This section, they wait to get their MP back. They wait for some arbitrary amount of time. Maybe you might be asking yourself, they have the exact amount of MP they need for the section routed out in their head, and they know exactly how much MP they need, so they're just waiting to get it. They have no clue how much MP they have, because you can't tell just from looking at the MP bar. There's no way to tell. The only way you can tell is by opening up the menu. As we've talked about before, the amount of MP you have in any given situation is effectively random, because the amount of MP that you gain per level is random within a specific range. So unless you've opened the menu recently, which this player has not, they don't know how much max MP they have, so they have no reference for how much MP they have. But somehow, some way, they do all of this movement after waiting to gain their MP. Do all of this movement because they got to collect all these map tiles. And wow, look at that. Exactly the amount of MP that they need. An RTA runner would not do that. An RTA runner, they would wait to get more MP, but this runner says, nah, I have enough. I know exactly how much MP I have. I know I have exactly enough to get through this section. Also using and abusing the left plus right, which is absolutely busted. So this is an example of extremely unrealistic movement and MP management this late into a run. You're extremely late into the run, you're basically near the end. You have 0 MP. As far as you know, your MP is completely gone because you can't see any of it in the UI. And there's no way to check unless you open your menu yourself. Even though this player has literally 0 MP, they still pull out their Alucard shield to get invincibility from these bats, which makes no sense. Because if you were this late into a run, nearly an hour and a half into a run that has frame perfect stuff absolutely everywhere, first try everywhere, you wouldn't risk losing your Alucard shield spell and losing 10s, 20s of seconds, getting enough MP to recast the spell later. You wouldn't risk that. And they go for it again. Mind you, they go for it again out of shield dashing. This movement is extremely awkward. Within one frame, they backdash and pull out the shield at the same time to get more invincibility frames. All of that for invincibility frames when they have literally 0 MP. If you hold the shield out a couple frames longer, you're going to lose the shield rod spell, and you're going to lose 10s of seconds. And they keep doing it through this entire section, and they know exactly how much invincibility frames they're going to have. They do it so often here, it makes no sense. An RTA runner would never risk this movement here. An RTA runner would not risk having absolutely 0 MP and then losing their shield rod spell, especially with all the risky movement they're doing with the bat and gravity jumps. All of those cost MP, which is going to leave you with less MP, and you have basically 0 MP, and you're still pulling out the Alucard shield. It's far too risky, and they do this all throughout the run once they grab the Alucard shield. Because the longer you hold out the Alucard shield, you're losing MP the whole time. And if it goes all the way down to 0, the Alucard shield spell disappears and you have to recast the spell, and that spell costs a lot of MP, and the time to re-equip the shield rod and then cast the spell also takes away time from you. So it's just slower to do it, and it's extremely risky to do it. But something tells me that this player's not worried at all about losing their shield rod spell. Again, this section is absolutely absurd with the amount of the MP usage and all of that is being performed here. Knows exactly that they have exactly enough MP here for a single wing smash. They go exactly down to 0 MP afterwards. Does all this movement. Does all this movement. Waits the perfect amount of time in order to get 2 gravity jumps. Knows they have exactly enough for 2 gravity jumps, which is absurd. And then, after using those 2 gravity jumps and going down to 0 MP, they're still using the Alucard shield for invincibility frames. Knowing that they're so close to the end. There's so much safer movement you could do there to not waste your MP. But instead, this runner just says, screw it. So here's something that's also kind of weird. So right now they have potions equipped on one hand and they have a shield on the other. So they don't have the means to like break open this wall normally. So they do these little dive kicks. I frame counted these dive kicks. Each one of these dive kicks happens exactly 10 frames after the double jump initiated. 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 of those were performed with the same exact frame data. They were all performed 10 frames after the double jump. Very similar situation, much later on in the run. Wing smash into dive kick, dive kick, dive kick. And guess what? All of those dive kicks performed exactly 10 frames after double jumping. So likely they were either performed frame perfectly by using like tool assisted, like save state frame advanced stuff, or they have some sort of dive kick macro, I guess. I don't know. But either way, yeah, that's not, yeah, for you to dive kick 7 different times in 2 different places using the same exact method of dive kicking and for them all to be performed within the same frame. There'd be some form of human error if this was performed by a real person in real time. So far, all I've been showing is all of the perfection that exists in this run. This right here is the first instance of a failed wing smash in the entirety of the run. An hour and 21 minutes into the run is the first instance you're going to see a failed wing smash. And you can tell this is a failed wing smash because you see them stop their movement and then fly down a little bit. This is what happens when you try to perform a wing smash forward and then immediately press down to do a downward wing smash. Downward wing smashes in general are kind of difficult to perform, especially 100% consistently. And this is the first wing smash missed by this runner over an hour and 20 minutes into a speedrun. What likely happened is what they did is that they would start a section, have a save state, go through a section, and then end the save state, and then keep doing that until they got a decent enough movement through a section. Because not all of the movement is 100% perfect. You will notice there are slight mistakes here and there, but they are extremely rare. And those mistakes are not very time consuming at all. But whenever it comes to frame perfect, difficult, pixel perfect, insane tricks that exist in this game, somehow, without any form of setup, this player is able to get them every single time. So here's another thing that doesn't really make sense. The way that this player handles map collection does not compute to how an RTA runner would perform map collection. They pull up the map here. This is an hour and 26 minutes into the speedrun, and this is their second time ever that they're pulling up the map to ensure that they got all of the map tiles, I presume. And that's them confirming every single map tile in the second castle so far, I guess. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense when you're on a run that is this well performed, quote unquote performed, because... So this section of the run is absolutely absurd when it comes to the map tiles that you need to collect. This person has no real setup for any of these map tiles. Every single time that you see them going against the ceiling, you need to be at the exact vertical height and the exact horizontal height for some of these map tiles to actually be confirmed. Right here, specifically, that map tile that they just got, this map tile too, those are some of the hardest map tiles to get, and this runner doesn't even check the map afterwards. These map tiles are notoriously buggy and will notoriously just not show up, even though it seemed like you were basically at the right positioning. They require nearly pixel perfect positioning, both horizontally and vertically, in order to collect. But this person, without any form of real setup, like right here, they just untransform and then gravity jump. They just untransform and gravity jump. That's enough to grab the map tile. But in a real RTA speedrun that required you to collect all the map tiles, there'd be pixel setups, there would be some form of like visual cues that you would go for to try and find these map tiles, because they are extremely difficult to collect. You wouldn't just YOLO untransform from one position and then jump up with a gravity jump and be like, yeah, I got that map tile. There's no way. Anybody who has ever played this game and tried to get the map tiles here would know how difficult these map tiles actually are to get. And any speedrunner who is trying to get all the map tiles quickly would have setups to make sure that they're grabbing all these map tiles, some sort of visual confirmation or something. Or, at the very least, let's just say, okay, they have a setup for all of these map tiles and like they're basically, you know, really good at finding these map tiles. Fine, whatever. After this entire section, they don't open the map to check to make sure they got all of them. Those are the buggiest map tiles in the entire game. And there's even more coming up in the later in this run as well. Some more map tiles up here that are extremely buggy as well. And this runner never checks. They only check the map, so they don't even check the map after that difficult section until nearly 15 minutes later. And it's not like they're checking their room count by opening the menu either, because they don't check their room count by opening the menu. They very rarely ever open the menu. And this is 2 minutes from the end of an hour-and-a-half run with all sorts of crazy frame-perfect glitches, including that, which is absolutely absurd. They have no setup, which means that this is likely frame perfect. You can make this trick have a 2-frame window with a specific setup, which every RTA runner goes for, basically. And if they don't go for it, they at least try to line up their positioning before going for the trick. In fact, I actually have an example of a runner lining up their positioning for this trick. Who is this runner, you might ask? Oh, it's the same exact person from 3 months prior to performing the run that we're watching and critiquing. So this is from 3 months before they submitted that run. And they're going for the same exact trick. So you're telling me from within 3 months, they go from backdashing to set up their position and then trying to line it up with small movements and then going for the trick. But all of a sudden, 3 months later, and this runner says, screw all that. I don't need that. I don't need to set up my position anymore. I'm just a god at the game now. I can do frame perfect tricks without even looking at the screen. And the sad part is, I showed you one of their previous speedruns, which likely has some cheats in it as well, maybe some macros, maybe some save states. We'll never know because we can never trust this person again. But in this run, this is one of their, I would say, more legit speedruns. I've watched it all the way through. There isn't anything super duper suspicious about this run other than the fact that they load what seems to be the bin file. It's impossible to see because the run quality only goes up to 240p. But very likely, it could also be them loading up a movie file, a tool-assisted movie file. I don't know. And it's impossible to really read what any of those files mean. And it's also possible that they just renamed their movie file to look like the bin file before they opened it up in their emulator. But this is the same person who, in the comments, I said, this is from over 2 years ago. This is how long I've been upset with this run, nearly 2 years. I say you use save states for this run, which is very clear, very obvious, and I'm hoping to just inform other people that, yeah, this run is not as legit as you think it is. This person, through Google Translate, I assume is trying to say, my proof are my other videos that I also performed. I think that's what they're trying to say. My proof are my videos on these emulators, which, funny enough, I have one of those videos right here, and you don't act like this at all. Your movement, the way you perform tricks, you were pause buffering in this speedrun. You were using positional setups in this speedrun, but somehow within the span from April to July, less than 3 months later, somehow you are able to say, screw it, I am so good at this game, I don't need pause buffering. I don't need positional setups anymore. I can do every frame perfect trick without even looking at the screen. I don't buy it. This run is not legitimate, and I don't want people to think that this is what legitimate SotN speedrunning looks like. This is what tool-assisted SotN speedrunning looks like, essentially. This just looks like a lazy task more than it looks like an actual genuine speedrun. And the sad thing is, it's very clear to me, watching some of the other runs that this runner has performed and put on their YouTube, they are a talented, knowledgeable SotN speedrunner. They know a lot about this game. They're very good at the game. They have potential to be one of the best SotN speedrunners, it seems like, assuming that a run like this is legitimate and not this one, which I know is not legitimate. But this one could well possibly be somewhat legitimate. They know a lot about the game. They know a lot about glitches and skips and ways to manipulate the game and ways to go fast. But for whatever reason, they decided to lie and say that a run that is extremely unrealistic was performed with no save states. And unfortunately, the thing that bothers me the most about it is it worked. They went from posting speedruns, a legitimate speedrun most likely, in my opinion, here, that only gets 63 views, to posting a run that gets nearly 1 million views. Can I even blame them for lying when lying and putting on a good show for people that don't know any better gets way more attention and way more views? That's the bittersweetness of this whole thing, is that I don't necessarily blame this runner. I don't blame them for doing this, but damn, am I sure disappointed. Because instead of having another knowledgeable, skilled, talented speedrunner in our corner, instead we have an asshole who 3 years after the speedrun has been published is still arguing with people in the comments that, no, it's legit. No, I didn't use save states. I swear I didn't use save states. When you could just come clean and be honest and join the rest of the community. I think it's sad that they decided to do this instead of being a legitimate speedrunner, because they definitely could have had the skill to be one of the best SotN speedrunners, but instead they decided to lie. And to cap off this video, they go into the final fight. They use Alucard Shield, which is to be expected. It's a very fast way to kill any boss, including the final bosses. And you're gonna notice something weird here. Right before the fight ends, they take the time to pause the game, to show the room count, and to show the in-game timer. And that was 18 frames before the game actually finished, and you wouldn't be able to open the menu at this point. Somehow they still have control. I don't know if that's just something that happens if you pause the game before beating the game. I don't know, I've never done that before, but yeah. Long story short, I'm disappointed that the most popular SotN speedrun of all time was a tool-assisted speedrun that used save states, probably used macros, and straight up cheating by using left plus right, which is banned in speedrunning, as well as using banned emulators that aren't allowed in speedrunning either. I wanted to make this video as a means of getting the knowledge out there that this run isn't legitimate, because I imagine a lot of you who watch my videos or watch SotN in general know about this speedrun and have maybe watched it. I want to set the expectations for what SotN speedrunning actually is. I don't want people to be misinformed about what is legit and what's not. Another thing that is very important to me is that we don't go out of our way to harass this person. This happened over 5 years ago. There's no need to bring up old stuff. The SotN community already is aware of this person and already has banned them from trying to submit to our leaderboards. They are not in the SotN community as of now and probably won't ever be. I just want people to be informed. That's all it is. Thank you for your time. And again, if you like SotN content or SotN speedrunning in general, consider subscribing. Consider supporting me on Patreon or on Twitch. And thank you again for watching. Have a great day.